Hey, it's Pamela, and it's... hey, it's Pamela from Hashtag Story... No, it's not. Okay. Take 3. Hi, it's Pamela from Enjoy Gifts and Gathering, and it's Hashtag Storytime with Pam. And tonight we are going to read Curious George Saves His Money. George was a good little monkey and always very curious, especially when he was in Tammy's toy store. There were so many things to wonder about: pogo sticks and skateboards, snow globes and kaleidoscopes, and even finger taps. But George's favorite thing to do in the toy store was to play at the train table. Today, there was a new train. It was wood and painted bright red, and it had a real working whistle. Okay, everyone that can whistle right now, because I can't. That's my husband doing it for me. Go ahead. There we go. George held it up to show his friend, the man with the yellow hat. Not today, his friend said. We're looking for a birthday present for Noah. Remember, he's turning 5. What do you think of this? George helped his friend pick out, I don't know, I just slipped my voice, a yellow and green hula hoop, while Tammy, the storekeeper, wrapped the present for the birthday party. George wandered back to the train table. I have a suggestion, George, said the man as he carried the gift over. Why don't you buy that new train yourself? The tag says $5. I'm sure you can save money for it. George liked this suggestion so much that he was only a little sorry to put the train back down. George had a good time at the birthday party. Noah let everyone have a turn at the hula hoop. It was harder than it looked. As soon as George got home that afternoon, he took the piggy bank down from his dresser. He opened the small plug on the bottom and shook it. Out tumbled a nickel. George ran to show his friend. You have 5 cents, the man said. I'll give you your allowance early this week. Don't spend it on candy. You'll have to save it up. The man gave George 2 quarters. Here's 50 cents, he said. Now you have 55 cents. You have only $4.45 left to save. George wasn't quite sure how much money that was, but it sounded like a lot. George dreamed about his red train that night. He was riding it through a forest of trees. He tugged on the whistle again. So that no one could miss such a shiny red engine. In the morning, George decided he would have to find a way to earn money faster. What if someone else were to buy that red train at the toy store before he could? He had an idea. George found 5 pennies and a dime in the sofa cushions. He found a nickel under the bed. His piggy bank jiggled nicely that evening. He had 74 cents saved. 1 more quarter and he'd have $1. The next morning, George had another idea. He'd get a job. Lucky for George, his neighbour Mr. Reddy needed help raking leaves. George worked all morning long, gathering armfuls of red, brown and gold leaves to add to a growing pile in the centre of the yard. Mr. Reddy brought out lemonade for the 2 to share. While his neighbour rested on the sun porch swing, George climbed a tree. The pile of leaves looked tempting from above. George wondered what would happen if, before he finished wondering, he had swung out of the branches and rocked into the centre of the pile. The leaves crunched and crumbled and swished and swirled. What an adventure! What hard work it was raking the leaves back up. But at the end of the day, Mr. Reddy paid him $2. George had $2.75 saved. That was almost $3. George spent many days doing odd jobs. He washed windows, he distributed flyers, he delivered flowers, he did dishes. At the end of the week, George finally had $5. I'm proud of you, George, said the man with the yellow hat. You saved all of your money by yourself. You've earned that train. The change clinked merrily in the piggy bank as George set off for the toy store. The autumn day was bright and clear and not very cold. George walked by the park. The neighbourhood children were playing with a windsock. Suddenly, it got stuck in a tree. They needed George's help. George carefully set his piggy bank down on a nearby bench where he could keep an eye on it. But little monkeys sometimes forget. And as George began to play with the children, he forgot to make sure that his bank was safe. As the afternoon wore on, his friends went home to have dinner. George rushed to the park bench where he had left his piggy bank. The toy store might be closing soon, but the bank was gone. Maybe George had the wrong bench. There were many in the park after all, but he was disappointed each time he ran up to another empty bench. George walked home sadly. He wondered how long it would take him to save $5 again. As George passed the toy store, he happened to look through the window. He couldn't believe his eyes. A little girl was holding his piggy bank. George rushed into the toy store just as the girl's mother was saying, "We found this across the street and waited for its owner, but it was getting late. We saw it has the name of your store on the bottom. Can you keep it in case someone comes to claim it?" George jumped up and down on the counter. "Why, George," Tammy said, "is this the piggy bank yours? You're lucky Hannah and her mother found it." Hugging his piggy bank tightly, George rushed over to the train section. He located the shiny red engine right away. As he carried it to the counter, the little girl looked at his train shyly. George realized he had not said thank you to her for keeping his savings safe. He looked at his train, and he looked at his piggy bank. He looked at Hannah. Good deeds deserve to be rewarded, he decided. George set the train down. He upended his bank on the counter and began to sort the dollars and the coins. George and Hannah walked out to the toy store that day, each carrying a train. George's small red engine... read what's on the page. George's small engine was not red, but it was shiny and blue, and he had paid for it all by himself. And best of all, he had a new friend who loved to play with trains almost as much as he did. All right. Have a lovely evening.